Hello, how you doing? Back again for another round of games I beat recently. I've got a few pickups as well, which I'll chuck in at the end. This time, I haven't played as many games as normal. One of the reasons for that is because I've been playing quite a lot of RPGs recently. I've been sort of going through a real RPG phase. And some of the RPGs I've played have been quite long, so they've obviously been taking up more time. As a result, I haven't been able to fit in as many games as I normally do. Having said that, I'm not going to be talking entirely about RPGs in this video, but there are quite a lot that I played. I'm going to start with this one though. This is the only PS4 game that I played actually since the last video. It's another PS Plus game. You might remember that I've been sort of trying to clear some of the PS Plus games off my hard drive. Some of them I've got my eye on, you know, but they've been on there for ages. I've always wanted to play them, but it's just getting around to it. This one I've had my eye on for a while, actually. I haven't deleted it yet because I want to sort of have it on here so I can talk about it, but it's called Styx, Master of Shadows, and it's like a sort of a stealth game. It plays a little bit like Splinter Cell actually, but it's set in like a fantasy world. So you're playing this sort of little goblin guy here, who actually is in a few games actually. They've just released a sequel to this. I think it's called Shards of Darkness or something like that, and he's in an RPG as well that this company made called of Orcs and Men, which I did actually pick up the other day in a sale, but I haven't played it yet. From what I hear, it's a little bit like Dragon Age, something like that maybe. Now this is a pretty decent game in a lot of ways. I've already compared it to Splinter Cell. It really does remind me of Splinter Cell. Imagine playing Splinter Cell, but you're playing a goblin. And let me continue the game so you can sort of get an idea of what it's like. So you're basically playing a goblin in a fantasy world, as opposed to, you know, like an NSA agent in a modern setting. But apart from that, it plays quite similar. It plays pretty much how you'd expect a game like that to play. Lots of sort of sneaking around, stealth killing people from behind. You know, you hide in the shadows. It's got like a kind of a interesting way of doing the light shade thing. Obviously you can see there's no meter, but when you're in the shadows you've got like a tattoo which will glow. I'm not sure if I can oh yeah, okay, you see that. I'm in the shadows now. You can see like the tattoo on his arm and his shoulder glows. That's telling you that you're in the shadows and no one can see you. And as you play this over time, you'll get more skills. You can build up your skills. You can actually respec your skills as well. So if you don't like the skills that you've got, you can just wipe them all away and choose them all again. But you can only do that in between missions. Some of the skills are actually very, very handy, you know, to get through this game, especially if you're playing the way I was. Basically, the way I played this was I didn't crank it up to the highest difficulty. Well, I think that's called Goblin difficulty, but I do prefer my stealth games to be a little bit more on the challenging side. So I put this on hard, and I tried to play it without sort of causing any alerts or getting caught. So every time I got caught, I would, you know, reload my save. You can save anywhere in this game, but talking about saving and loading, that's the biggest problem with this game, and it really drags this game down, is that the loading times in this game are pretty diabolical. I don't think they're so bad in this area, so I can actually get caught. I'll get deliberately caught and reload. It's going to take me not long to die because I'm playing on hard. There you go. And we'll load last game. Now, this loading time isn't too bad. It's still pretty long. But as you get further into this game, the loading times get absolutely ridiculous. I mean, as you can tell, this is still quite long now, but because this game is very sort of, if you're playing it like I was, in a very kind of sort of trial and error fashion, so every time you get caught you're going to reload, and you know, you may be getting caught quite a lot, because especially if you're playing on like one of the harder difficulties, after a while it just becomes a real chore. because you spend more time looking at the loading screen than you do playing the game. And it really drags this game down, unfortunately. What I would recommend if you're interested in playing this game, maybe you've still got it on your hard drive from PS Plus all those months ago. I would recommend actually not playing this game on one of the harder difficulties, and not being so anal about not setting off alerts and things like that. I think you'd probably have more fun with this game if you didn't bother with all that, and you just you took all the times you were captured or caught, and you just sort of played it like that, because you can escape if you get caught. Sometimes you have to fight your way out, which isn't that great, to be honest with you, the fighting in this game. But there's skills that you can get which will make the fighting easier, which I didn't bother going for any of those skills because I was playing it in a way where I was trying not to get caught. But if you played it in a different way, where you made it a little bit easier that you could escape when you get caught and you didn't have to keep reloading your save all the time, then you might have a little bit more fun with this game than I did, unfortunately. I was getting quite aggravated with this game after a while, just because of the really long loading times, which I didn't actually think were necessary, because this game looks okay. I mean, it's a little bit last gen. The stages are big, but they're not huge, and I didn't really sort of see any need for there to be long loading times in this. Apparently they've fixed it in the sequel, although I'll have to see for myself. But if you look online, there's loads of people complaining about the loading times in this game. They're pretty atrocious. But apart from that, it's a shame, because that has spoilt everyone else's hard work in this game, because the level design is pretty good, the characters are good, the gameplay's really good if you like stealth games. It's all there. It's just completely ruined by these horrible loading times, which like I said, are going to be even worse if you're playing it like I was, and reloading every time you get caught or every time you set off an alert or whatever. Maybe one to sort of take the difficulty down a couple of notches and not worry so much about that. You might end up having more fun with it. Yeah, but anyway, I did finish this, and I captured this as well, so I'm probably going to upload a playthrough of this at some point. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to splice it all together, because like I said, I was saving and reloading a lot in this, and that might make it take forever for me to edit it, but I'll do it at some point anyway, because I'm quite interested in seeing what my playthrough's like, because I haven't watched any of it. Oh yeah, one more thing about this game that I forgot to mention, but I'll mention it now, is it's one of those games where they like to reuse levels. So even though it's actually quite a long game, this, but the problem is that once you've got about halfway through it, the last half of the game is pretty much just backtracking through the whole game again. So you get to a certain point and then you sort of turn around, go back again through all the same levels. They're slightly different, the levels, in the enemy placements are different, and the enemies have been upgraded, etc, etc, but they're still the same level, but you're going back to front. You're starting from the end of the level and working your way through to the beginning of the level. So yeah, I mean, it makes the game longer, but you could also see that as sort of dragging out the game a little bit as well. It's some developers do that. It's a way of extending your game without really having to do much, I suppose. And apparently I've read that the sequel does that as well. So if that's an issue for you, there you go. Okay, so I've just switched over to the PS3 because I want to talk about a couple of PS1 games that I played. But before I do that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about this, which I'm having trouble holding up because it's connected to the power cable. There we go. Which I played on the iPad, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which is one of the RPGs that I played. Never played it before. I've been really getting into BioWare recently. You remember about a year ago I was really into playing Baldur's Gate 2. I played through all the Mass Effect trilogy over the last few years. And yeah, I had this on my iPad, Knights of the Old Republic. Bought it a while back. It was really cheap actually. It was in a sale. It was about sort of £4, something like that. And yeah, I just got in the mood to play it. I actually wanted to play Dragon Age, which I did play, and I'm going to be talking about Dragon Age a little bit later. But I thought I'd play Knights of the Old Republic first because it came out first, and it didn't actually come out that long after Baldur's Gate 2, believe it or not. Obviously, when it first came out, it was only on Xbox and PC, which were two platforms that I didn't have at the time, so I missed it. And yeah, it got re-released on the iPad, so I snapped it up then and I played through it recently. What I will say about the iPad version is it's not particularly great. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as the PC version, because I've been looking at videos online, and it probably doesn't look as good as the Xbox version either. It doesn't run particularly well. It's got a little bit of a shonky frame rate, and some of the more arcadey parts, like these parts where you're in between planets, sometimes you'll get into these sort of random space battles where, you know, you're in not the Millennium Falcon, but it's a ship that's very similar to the Millennium Falcon, and you're having to sort of, you know, shoot spaceships with a laser cannon. That doesn't work very well on the iPad at all. It's really awkward to play, and I actually found myself reloading a lot of the time if I got into any of those battles, because they were just really, really painful and not fun at all on a touch screen. And you've also got these racing bits as well, when you're kind of racing on, I can't remember what they call them, these bike things. They're not land speeders, it's something else, but that didn't work very well on the touchscreen either. I found those really awkward. So there was loads of side missions in Knights of the Old Republic involving those bikes, and the swoop bikes I think they're called. I didn't bother doing any of them. I just did the one that is sort of compulsory to progress with the plot, and I skipped all the others because they just didn't perform very well at all on the iPad. Having said that, I mean, it's still playable on the iPad, and if it's your only option, like it was the only option for me, it's worth it. But just a warning, if you've got any other way of playing it, PC or Xbox, I'd probably go for that, to be honest with you. But as far as the game goes, it's a really good game. It probably took me about just over 60 hours, maybe 65 hours, something like that, to beat it, which for a BioWare game is actually quite short. When you consider that, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 2 can easily be a couple of 100 hours, and I've just finished Dragon Age and the expansion Awakenings, and that was about 150 hours. So 65 hours is, you know, that's a little, you know, quite a short game as far as BioWare goes. I don't know, I suppose Mass Effect is around about 60 hours each, but you know, they're fairly short games for BioWare standards as well. I think gameplay wise, it reminded me of like a cross between Baldur's Gate and Mass Effect, funnily enough. You've got the 3-man party like you do in Mass Effect, but the actual gameplay itself is very similar to Baldur's Gate in that it's not real time, it's more kind of round based. In fact, the system I think is very similar. I mean, it uses to Baldur's Gate, where it uses, you know, like the saving throws. It's very Dungeons and Dragons-y, basically. And there's a lot of throwbacks to Baldur's Gate. When you're sort of leaving an area, it will say, you must gather your party before venturing forth, which is something that you hear all the time in Baldur's Gate. And structurally, it's very similar. And story-wise, it's quite similar as well, actually, when you think about it. Obviously, it's a 3D game. You know, it plays like a, you know, sort of 3D action adventure, but the combat engine is basically Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2. When I was playing it, it made me think how well suited Star Wars is for an RPG. I mean, I'm not going to spoil the story of Knights of the Old Republic in case you haven't played it, but similar to Episode 7, it's very, very, very inspired by the first Star Wars film. There's a lot of sections in it which you think, yeah, they've taken that from A New Hope, even though it's actually set about sort of 4,000 or 5,000 years before A New Hope. It's basically a typical fantasy story, except for instead of burning down villages, they're destroying whole planets, and instead of taverns and inns, you've got cantinas. That's all I've really got to say about it, really. I mean, it's a good RPG. It's probably, for Star Wars fans, it's fantastic because there's so much fan service in it, and it's a pretty decent RPG. Maybe a little bit on the short side. I know that sounds ridiculous, saying a 60-hour game's a little bit on the short side, but if you've played longer RPGs, you'll probably know what I mean. Okay, so from one Star Wars game to another, after playing Knights of the Old Republic, I was in a little bit of a Star Wars mood, and actually got around to watching Rogue One, which I actually quite enjoyed. I enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Episode 7, I have to say. It just made me want to play another Star Wars game. So, looking through my collection, didn't have that many, but I wanted to play one of the older ones because if you know me, I like to kind of start from the beginning and work my way through. I didn't have a lot of the really old Star Wars games, you know, like the 16-bit ones, and I wasn't really too interested in playing those because I played Super Star Wars a while back and it was okay, but I was up for something old but not as old as that. So I went for this, which is a PS1 game, The Phantom Menace, which I actually bought a while back, like quite a few years ago, and never got around to playing it. Now, I've been told by certain people on the internet and in certain reviews I've read that this is a really good game. Unfortunately, I don't think this has held up particularly well. It has quite a lot of bugs in it. There's quite a lot of glitches in this game, which, I don't know, maybe back in the day you could have ignored them, but now they really stand out, and there's a lot of them. You've got a lot of clipping issues in this game. I had like bosses falling through the floor, really annoying because you're sort of fighting a boss and it's nearly dead, and then it clips through the floor and then it respawns and all its health's back again. That's fun. You get enemies firing through the walls in this game. Quite a lot. That happens a lot more often than it should, and obviously that's quite aggravating. You can fall out of bounds in this game as well, so there's quite a lot of sort of clipping problems. The controls aren't very good. Either you've got this sort of double jump, which you can only do as certain characters. You play through this game with about sort of 4 or 5 different characters from the movie, and when you're playing as a Jedi, you've got this double jump. The only problem is it's like a time sensitive double jump where you have to sort of, press the button twice within a certain time frame. I don't like that. I found that quite unintuitive. I prefer to have a double jump that lets you press it anytime you want in the in the upward arc. Obviously once you've missed the upward arc, then that's fine, the double jump's been lost, but this has a very fine time limit, which isn't always easy to nail, and it can be quite frustrating when you don't get it. Also the collision detection as well for the jumping isn't great, so there's a lot of times where you make the jump but you'll slide off of the edge. Not great, and it feels a little bit floaty as well. There's quite a lot of platforming puzzles in this game, which is why the jumping can be a problem sometimes. One of the biggest problems is the camera angle, which is kind of like top down. I wonder if I can boot up a save. I did finish this. One of the good things about this game actually is you can save and load anywhere you like, which is really useful in a game like this, because there are some quite tricky parts where you will want to definitely save after you've got through them, and the loading and saving time is quite quick as well, as you just seen. This it's not too painful to sit and wait for it to load like it can be with Styx, Master of Shadows. Here we go. So yeah, I need to put this onto analog. Actually, that's the wrong part, because I'm controlling. It's actually a lot easier to control this with analog mode rather than digital mode. Even though, like I said, the control isn't great. But as you can see, the view is kind of top down, so you can't really see that far ahead of you. Here it's not so bad because this is like a sort of cutscene bit. But when it gets back into the action, the camera should sort of return to be above his head. Come on, get on with it. This is like near the end of the game, so if you've seen the film, you'll know what bit this is meant to be. But yeah, come on, we get it. We've got to go and avenge you or whatever. But let's get on with it, because I'm trying to demonstrate something. Some of the glitches in this as well revolve around the audio dialogue. So they can freeze up sometimes. So you'll be sort of talking to people in these kind of RPG type, sort of dialogue screens where you choose different options that what you want to say, but sometimes the audio can glitch out. There we go, that went on for a little bit longer than I wanted it to. Yeah, and you can sort of be sitting there for, oh, this is the end of the game, that's why. Okay, I'm going to skip that because I don't want to spoil the ending in case you want to play this. Let's load up a different save. But yeah, anyway, yeah, audio glitches. It's got audio glitches in it, which sometimes will have you sitting there for about 30 seconds waiting for the audio to catch up with the dialogue on screen, which can be a little bit annoying as well. But yeah, here we go. Look at that view. And you can see as well, I think the enemy fired through a wall as well. Maybe not, but they do that a lot. Look at that, stuttering as well. Lots of sort of stuttering when you get too close to the edge of things. But oh, here we go, dying as well because I've just slipped off the edge of a wall when I didn't mean to. There's lots of stuff like that in this game. It can get quite annoying. Load up another save because I really want to show this sort of issue with the top-down camera. Here we go. Now I can't see anything ahead of me, so people are going to start shooting at me and I'm not going to be able to see them. It's not so bad in this bit, but there's parts where, I mean, especially this corridor which I've actually got through, but this corridor, you've got people right at the end of it shooting at you. You can't see them. It's very difficult to line your shots up as well. You always seem to be missing. I think this game could have done with a little bit of sort of light auto aim. So all in all, nowhere near as good as people were saying. I did finish it, but it was at times quite a frustrating experience. One thing I will say about it though is it's pretty varied. There's quite a lot of different gameplay styles in this game. You've got all these sort of shooting bits, and I'm not playing a Jedi at the moment, but if I was playing a Jedi I'd be able to do lightsaber fights, which aren't great either, but you know, they're in there. There's not really any skill involved with the lightsaber fights in this. They're very sort of attrition based. You just sort of walk up to the character, you just press the slash button, and if you've got the highest health bar, you're probably going to win, and if they've got the highest health bar, they're probably going to win. So the fights sort of tend to revolve around you sort of walking up, slashing away. If your health gets too far down, you just run away, find a health pack, then return to it. And there's not really that much skill in the melee fighting in this game, unfortunately. But you've also got platform puzzles, which I was talking about earlier, which are actually quite well designed, even though the jumping controls aren't great. And you've got, you know, like your classic action adventure block switch puzzles as well. And you've got escort missions, which actually aren't as bad as they could be, because as long as you don't wander off too far ahead from the person that you're escorting, they're not going to die. And you've got like RPG sections as well in this game in some parts, where you sort of do fetch quests and trading missions and things like that. So it's actually quite varied, but it's just a little bit shonky. There's a lot of glitches in it. It doesn't play particularly well. I think if you're into old PS1 action adventures, you might find something to like in this. I mean, there were some parts in this which I liked because they were, they were quite cinematic. There was some quite sort of good level design, and it's got that sort of grainy PS1 charm to it. But I don't know, overall, not great. If it were a little bit more polished, this could have been still a really good game. But like I said, obviously rushed for whatever. I mean, it came out about a year after the film, but I don't know, it does feel very rushed. I think they probably didn't want to leave it till too long after the film to release it. And yeah, not particularly great, unfortunately. I'd only recommend this if you're a massive Star Wars fan and you haven't played it, or you're just curious about it, and you've got a thing for old school PS1 action adventure games and you haven't played this either. Okay, so while I'm here, I might as well talk about this other PS1 game that I played. This actually was a while back. I think I played this before Christmas, and it's one of the games that I could have maybe talked about in my last video, but I couldn't be bothered. But while I'm here, I might as well talk about this now. It's a game called Hidden and Dangerous, which is one of the... got the case somewhere, here we go. Hidden and Dangerous. It's actually a port of a PC game, and it's a World War II first-person shooter. If you remember, I was talking a little bit about World War II games and how, I like to play them around about Christmas. And the Medal of Honor games have always reminded me of Christmas. And I thought, last Christmas just gone, I thought, well, I've had this game knocking around. It wasn't meant to be very good. But I've played all the Medal of Honor games on PS1, and I've played all the Medal of Honor games on PS2. And I haven't played the two sort of recent Medal of Honor games that are set in sort of modern settings, but I played all the World War II ones. And I thought, well, I've got this, I might as well just pop this in and play this Hidden and Dangerous. And it's, what can I say about it? It's a real bottom barrel first person shooter on the PS1. Pretty shonky, to be honest with you, and if I can demonstrate it, but you'll see straight away. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to sort of press buttons until it starts. I know that you have to sort of select people and select equipment and things like that, but I'm not going to bother because I've already beaten this and I'm only going to be demonstrating it. But it looks atrocious, this game, and it doesn't play particularly well either. It's got some very strange controls. I don't think it uses the analog control. It might, but it's got a weird setup where you sort of use the face buttons to move, and it's all a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. Have I got to do more? I thought it was going to start up the mission, but here we go. But yeah, I'm just going to sort of see how this goes. You can also die very quick in this game as well. It's actually kind of easy once you get used to it. Oh, here we go. Right, yeah, the control is pretty bad. The analog sticks aren't doing anything, but I don't know if that's because it's, it is on analog mode. Yeah, so the analog sticks, oh yeah, I can look around with the analog stick, which is okay. But to move forward and backwards, you have to use the face buttons. It doesn't use the other analog stick, which is a bit of a mess. As you can see, it looks a bit rough. It doesn't really get any better than this. It's no Medal of Honor. And it's got some weird controls with the aiming as well. If you get a sniper rifle, which I probably didn't choose because I just rushed through my equipment selection, but if you get a sniper rifle, which is actually one of the most useful weapons in this game, and you put it in the scope mode, it will just stay in the scope mode. If you select, no, you don't even put it in the scope mode. If you select the sniper rifle, it automatically goes into like the scope, and you can't get out of the scope. So as long as you've got the sniper rifle selected, you're just walking around looking through the scope all the time, which is obviously a bit jarring. But one thing I did like about this game, and it's weird, and it actually sort of kept me playing through to the end, is if you see in that little bottom left corner, you've got a guy's face and it says 12. That tells you how many enemies are left on the stage, and you get that on every single level. And I just found that really satisfying, because I like that. I like being able to clear out areas and knowing, yeah, I've got rid of everyone in this area. And there's hardly any first-person shooters that have that. I'm not a fan of respawning enemies at all. I like a finite amount of enemies, and I don't know, there was something about the fact that this tells you quite explicitly how many enemies are in the stage, how many more left to kill. So once you've killed them all, you just get a really sort of good sense of satisfaction. And it encourages you to explore, you know, the rest of the level, because you know that you're not going to sort of turn a corner and get mowed down, which is quite easily to happen in this game. The best way to play this game is to just be very stealthy and just kill everybody from a distance. If you sort of try and get too close, you're going to get taken out quite quickly. And it's one of those games where you can only really save in between stages, and some of the stages can be quite long-ish. So if you die at the end, you've got to start all the way from the beginning. But as long as you're careful, that's probably not likely to happen. There was one part in this game where I got a little bit stuck, and right near the end, where I had to actually climb up some stairs to clear out a section of the level. And nowhere in the manual does it tell you how to climb stairs, and I can't remember how to do it, but it's quite obscure. You have to sort of hold down 2 buttons, and myself and quite a lot of other people have got stuck at that part. I've even sort of gone on to sort of videos on YouTube to have a look, because I knew that I was meant to climb these stairs, but I just couldn't work out how to do it. And there was a lot of people saying, oh no, it's broken, you can't do it. You can actually do it, but it's really weird the way that you have to climb these stairs at the end of the game to clear out this section. I'm going to just sort of wander about a bit, because I'm probably going to die. I just want to sort of show how easy it is to die in this game. Here we go, some soldiers, and I can't even remember how to shoot them, to be honest with you. But there we go. I'm getting absolutely hammered, and I'm going to die. Hello. I don't have to start the stage again. Not that I was particularly far into the stage anyway. But yeah, Hidden and Dangerous. Very bottom barrel. World War II first-person shooter on the PS1. I quite enjoyed it, mainly because it's got that how many people left in the stage counter. But if it didn't have that, I'd be nothing to recommend this game at all, really. It's really for completionists like me that want to play every single first-person game on the PS1. Okay, so I've only really got a couple more games left to talk about, but they're actually both pretty epic games. Now, this next game is a little bit of a dark horse. When I show it up, you might think that's an epic game, but trust me, this game is absolutely nuts. And it's Etrian Odyssey on the DS. Now, I've been going through a bit of a dungeon crawl phase in the last few months. You know, that's sort of in addition to my RPG phase, where I've been really sort of almost craving to play dungeon crawlers. When I say dungeon crawlers, I mean, you know, like the sort of first-person style dungeon crawlers where, you know, you sort of grid-based first-person dungeon crawlers. It's a sort of game that I enjoy, but I don't play very often. In fact, I can probably count the amount of first-person dungeon crawlers I've played on one hand. I've played Phantasy Star, first Phantasy Star, which I suppose isn't a pure first-person dungeon crawler, because it's got, you know, more sort of JRPG elements in it as well, with the overworld map. But the dungeons are, you know, they're very, very, very basic, but they're first-person dungeon crawls nevertheless. I played Shining in the Darkness, which is a pretty good dungeon crawler on the Mega Drive, which you can actually get on the Mega Drive collection. I think it might be on a couple of Mega Drive collections. So you might even have that knocking about. If you like dungeon crawlers, that's worth a look. It's a little bit on the short side for a dungeon crawler, but it's pretty good. And I played one on the PSP called Menace Original, which I just picked up on a whim, and yeah, I just started playing it and got really sucked into it. And that's the thing about these style of games, is that you can get really hooked on them, and you know, you can play them for hours. They're quite absorbing. So yeah, I was in the mood to play one, and I thought I'd give this a go because I'd heard quite a lot of good things about this Etrian Odyssey. I knew that you drew your own map on the second screen, which is a great idea and works really well. And funny enough, it was my brother actually that got me into wanting to play this, because I think we were out walking in the forest on like a family outing one day, and he said, you know what, this really reminds me of playing Etrian Odyssey, this walking through the forest, and I can sort of see what he means, especially with this one. The first one, there's a remake of this as well on the 3DS, which is, I think he's got similar environments. But the first few stages are you're walking around a forest, and yeah, it does sort of give you that feeling. It's hard not to think of Etrian Odyssey. I think if you're walking down these sort of forest paths and you've played this game, obviously you're not going to get jumped by rabbits and have a turn-based battle, but it's the feeling is there nevertheless. So yeah, I started playing this, and I got quite hooked on it. It's quite an addictive game. The dungeons are really well designed. Well, the main game dungeons anyway. I'll get onto the bonus dungeons in a bit. It's one of those games that you can just lose hours playing. There's always something to work towards. There's always something that you want to do to get further, to level up your characters, or just get that little bit further in the dungeon, map out the dungeon a little bit more. Very absorbing. In fact, I remember I was, after playing it for a couple of weeks, I was actually around my brother's and I was talking about it, and I remember showing him my 3DS charts, where you can see how my records, where you can see how long you've been playing it for. And I think I was up to about 80 hours or something like that, and I was on coming near to the end of the main game. I wasn't in the last dungeon, but I think I was on the second to last kind of area. They're called stratas. And it was 80 hours. I remember showing him that and going, God, look at that, how long I've been playing it for. That's nothing. Because having 100%ed it now, I did everything in the game. This is how long that I was playing for. I don't know if you can see that. 178, it's not very well focused, but 178 hours it took me to 100% that game, which is nuts. For a DS game, that's pretty nuts. I mean, I think the longest RPG experience I've ever had was Oblivion, which took about 300 hours. But you expect, to do everything in Oblivion, or most of it anyway. Probably about sort of 99% of Oblivion took about 300 hours. You wouldn't expect that this little sort of unassuming DS cartridge would take nearly 180 hours. That's insane. And the time flies as well. It's if you get into it, you really don't realise how long you've been playing it for. But anyway, onto these. I was going to talk about the post-game dungeons. Now, the main game is really good. It's really well put together. Like I said, it just keeps you wanting to play for longer and longer to build up your skills. Every time you level up, it's great. You really look forward to it. It's varied enough. It's not just a repetitive dungeon crawl. Every single stage has got some unique twist to it, and where you use different tactics, and that's all great until you get to the post-game dungeon, and they got really cruel with the post-game dungeon. Let's put it like that. It's the combat isn't necessarily any harder if you've sort of been building up your characters well, and you sort of you know the right tactics to use for fighting. In fact, it gets to the stage where you just end up running from most of the battles. there's a level cap in this, which was a little bit of a disappointment. It was quite strange when I hit the level cap, but I'll talk about that in a sec, because I'm talking about the post-game dungeons. The problem with them is they're very, very trial and error, which isn't how the other dungeons in the game are, and it can get quite annoying because there's these like there's these portals where you're not quite sure what the right portal to take is, and one of them will send you in the right direction, the other ones won't. It's all very trial and error. There's a stage where there's lots of pits, and there's only one true path through the dungeon, and if you sort of step on the wrong square, you're going to fall down to the level below and have to climb all the way back up and sort of keep trying. Now, there is actually a way that you can beat that without using trial and error, but you have to have a particular skill, which unfortunately is a skill that I never got, because throughout the rest of the game it's not really that useful. It's only really useful for this one floor in this post-game dungeon. And because you hit a level cap, you're probably going to hit the level cap before beating the game with a lot of your characters. You don't really you don't have those skills. There is a way to respec your characters so you can get skills that you need, but it involves losing 10 levels, which is a pain. And that's one of the problems I had with this game, the level cap. I think I can sort of understand why they put the level cap in, because they want you to think about how you're going to spend your skills, and they want you to sort of swap characters in and out that have got different skills that are suitable for different sections of the game. That's fine, but I think this game would have been a lot more fun if they'd have just made the levels a little bit higher. I think the level cap in this is 70. I think it would have been much better if they'd have brought it up to about 99, which is what you'd expect. I think 70 seems a little bit low for a level cap. I would have probably enjoyed this even more than I did if they'd have let me level up a little bit higher and have a little bit more skills to use for my characters, rather than, reaching a cap and having to lower, respec them by losing 10 levels. That really makes the game drag on for a lot longer than it would otherwise. In fact, when I first hit the level cap, it was almost like being at a really fun party. You're having a really great time, and then all of a sudden the host sort of comes in and says, "Oh, we've got a headache. Sorry everyone, but we're going to have to shut this one down early." It was like, "Oh, you're joking, a level cap?" Because I wasn't expecting it, especially not level 70. And it was almost like, I don't know if I want to keep playing this anymore, because there's nothing left to look forward to. But anyway, I beat the main game, and I thought, well, I might as well do this post game dungeon. It was only 5 floors. Sometimes in games like that, if there's a post game dungeon which is like 100 floors, and all the floors are really similar, like something like Dark Cloud or Parasite Eve, I'm not going to bother doing that. But in this, it was just another 5 floors, and I thought, yeah, no, I'll do it. I might as well. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, that just sucked me into the game even more, because it became apparent, especially when I got to the last boss, the very last boss in the post-game dungeon, that I was not able to beat the game with the skills that I had. They're quite sneaky, because they give you these skills which aren't actually that useful throughout most of the game, so you tend to sort of ignore them, but they're essential to beat the last few bosses, like the post-game bosses in the game. It's impossible without these skills. So you end up respecing your characters, which is, like I've said, you have to sort of rest them, and when you rest them, you lose 10 levels, but you're able to reallocate all your skills. You don't get any new skills. You lose the skills you had from the 10 levels you've lost, but you get the rest of your skills back, so you can reallocate them. So it was almost like a whole new game. It was almost like having to start from scratch, rebuild these characters back up again, so I could beat these last few bosses. So I did that, and I thought, I'm done with this game. And I don't know how long that was. That probably added about an extra sort of 30-40 hours onto the game as it was. But then I thought, I'm done with this game now. But then I went online, and I thought, I'm going to watch a let's play of this game, because I'm in the mood. Still in the mood for the game, even though I've beat it in air quotes. But then I noticed that there's another credit sequence in this game that you get if you 100% it. And I don't know why, but that just made me want 100% the game. I thought, okay, they're acknowledging that, you know, you've properly beat this game with this extra credit sequence. If that wasn't in there, I probably wouldn't have bothered, because I'm not, you know, these sort of RPGs that make you sort of hunt for rare drops and things like that to get 100%. If I've beat the game, I'm not normally that interested in doing them. I mean, I'm into collectibles, but rare drops in RPGs isn't something I've ever really sort of gone after once I've beat the game. But something about this, just the fact that it had this bonus credit sequence, just made me really want to do it. So yeah, that was almost like a whole new game in itself. You have to basically, you've got two codexes. You've got a monster codex and you've got an item codex, and the way that you completely 100% the game is by filling those in. So you have to beat every single monster in the game, and you have to find every single item. And some of these items are quite rare drops, you know, they're sort of not mega rare, but you know, they can be sort of 5%, 10% chance to get them, and they involve they drop from some of the hardest bosses in the game. So my last few hours of this game was basically with a crew that was just spec just to beat this one boss that I hadn't got this rare drop from, but they were kind of kitted out, so they were wearing all the luck equipment, all the equipment that sort of boost your luck, which meant that they was kind of at a disadvantage, because you know, they wasn't able to use some of the best equipment, because I was using this luck equipment which wasn't as strong. All it did really was boost your luck stat. And I must have fought this, I think it was the lightning dragon or something, over and over and over again, just to get this rare drop, which was like the last rare drop that I needed in the game. A little bit tedious, but once it dropped and I realised that I'd actually 100% of this game, it was a really, really good feeling, even though it took about 178 hours to do it. Obviously not to get that drop, that would have been ridiculous, but you know, to beat the game from beginning to end and get the second credit sequence took that long. So yeah, all in all, apart from not particularly liking the level cap in this game, finding some of the post-game dungeons a little bit on the cruel, borderline kind of tedious side, and also some of the cutesy kind of, it's got a very sort of cute style to it, and I tend to prefer darker RPGs really, especially dungeon crawlers. I think that dungeon crawlers work a little bit better when they're slightly darker in tone, and you get this sort of really sort of foreboding feeling from being in the dungeon. Don't really get that from this. This is more on the sort of cute side, I suppose. But how is this absorbing, this game, and is this addictive? I do actually have some of the other ones. I'm a little bit scared to start them, because I know how long potentially it's going to take me to finish them, but I will do one day. I think this style of game is the sort of game I only ever really play every sort of couple of years or so, but I do get cravings for this style of game, and I do really enjoy them when I play them and get really sucked into them. Okay, so I've got one more game left to talk about. So this was going to be quite a short one, but when I show you what game it is, you'll probably understand why most of my time in these last couple of months has been spent playing just a few games, and it is this Dragon Age Origins. Been going for a bit of a BioWare stage recently, having played the two Baldur's Gate games, played Knights of the Old Republic. Thought I'd get into Dragon Age. One of the reasons is because my friend Mandy's been playing Dragon Age as well, and it gives us something to talk about really, because we've both sort of been playing it roughly at the same time, so we've been having some good little chats about Dragon Age, our adventures. She's been playing a slightly different character to me. She played a rogue, I played a mage. Always play a mage. She recommended me not to play a mage actually, because she said that you'll have problems because there'll be things that you can't do, like opening chests and things like that. But yeah, I think I preferred playing the mage, because I was just so powerful in this game. Maybe not at the start, It was a little bit of a struggle, but once, you know, I got a good build going, I was unstoppable in this game. And I did things that she couldn't do as a rogue. I mean, she tried to beat the... I mean, I played this on hard because I had a feeling it was going to be a little bit on the easy side. It's actually not that difficult on hard, to be honest with you, if you know what you're doing. But, you know, with a mage, I was able to sort of do things like get a heavy hitter trophy when I was quite low, like level 12, and I was able to beat the High Ashes Dragon, which is one of the hardest bosses in the game, at about level 14. She wasn't able to... Well, she did get the heavy hitter trophy, but she could never beat the dragon. I said to her, "You're never going to be able to go and backstab a dragon. You got to pelt it with ice storms and lightning storms." But yeah, I think this is a fantastic RPG. Funnily, when I first started playing it, I wasn't too sure, because I think it's that typical thing. If you've played a game like Baldur's Gate, which obviously is this is meant to be like a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate, this doesn't have the depth of a game like Baldur's Gate, and there's things in it where I was getting a little bit frustrated. I was like, well, why can't my wizard use spells, or my mage use spells to open chests like you can in Baldur's Gate? Why do I have to be stuck with a rogue to do it? And there's other little sort of niggly things as well, like you've got these combat tactics, but they're okay, but they're not quite as deep as I'd have liked them to be. There's certain things that you can't do, like you can't set your healer to automatically resurrect you if you die. You have to sort of fiddle around selecting another character and get them to revive you, and it's all a little bit fiddly. It'd be nice to have that automated, like you know, you can have automated healing and things like that, but you can't have automated resurrection. Because I was used to playing Baldur's Gate on a touchscreen, I found going back to using a controller to navigate these menus felt a little bit clunky at first, but I did get used to it. But the more I played this game, the more I started thinking, you know what? Okay, this isn't as deep as Baldur's Gate in terms of mechanics, but it's a hell of a lot more immersive. I mean, the thing is about Baldur's Gate is it's a very, very absorbing game. And I'm talking about Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, all the Infinity Engine games. They're very absorbing games, but they're not particularly immersive games. You don't feel ever really like you're in the dungeon exploring it. You more feel like you're just observing what's happening, observing what's happening. You know, you're a commander, controlling the action from a distance, but you don't ever feel like you're inside that dungeon exploring it. When this all comes together, you really get immersed in it. You feel like you are in this dungeon with your party, and when it all comes together, it's great. You know, your rogue is pointing out traps before you get to them, and you know, you're being automatically buffed and healed by your healer, and it's visceral. It's all very visceral. I think that's the best word I can use to explain it, which isn't like Baldur's Gate 2. And I think this is as deep as it needs to be as well. I mean, there's enough depth in there to keep you going. Definitely. I mean, I did spend quite a long time, you know, fiddling around with my party's equipment and gear and trying to get the best possible build I could. Like I said, it doesn't have the depth that, you know, the Infinity Engine games they did does, but it certainly has a lot more depth than a game like Mass Effect, I'd say. And I think the characters are better as well. I mean, the other thing about this game, I really liked all the scenarios and the characters and the story. I think is a lot better. It really gets you sucked into it. So I played this, and I played the Awakenings expansion as well. And once I've finished recording this video, I'm going to play Witch Hunt, which I'm quite looking forward to. It's a funny thing in this game is I missed a few things in this game as well. I missed a couple of the characters, because there's a bit near the start of this game where if you leave an area, you can't go back. So if you miss stuff in the area, you've missed it for good. And I didn't realise that, and I was a little bit annoyed as well when that happened. Although the rest of the game kind of made up for it. So I missed, I think there's a fighter called Sten I never got, and there was a rogue character, Liliana or something, never got her. So those characters, you know, just passed me by. But I mean, the other characters in this game are great. And I'm looking forward to playing Witch Hunt, because for want of anyone better, I had a romantic relationship with Morrigan in this game, which, I don't know, if you know Morrigan as a character, it's hardly a romantic relationship, but you know, I did it anyway because there's a trophy up for grabs. But if you've played this game, you'll know that there's a big twist at the end. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing Witch Hunt. I made the Dark Promise choice, in case you're wondering if you've played this game. So yeah, that should hopefully make Witch Hunt quite interesting. Didn't pick up any of the other DLC for this game because, I don't know, it didn't look that interesting. Maybe mildly interesting, but I think Awakenings and Witch Hunt are probably the two prime pieces of DLC, especially if you played through the Morrigan romance like I did. But yeah, all in all, I love this game. I thought it was great. Maybe a little bit dated in terms of graphics, but everything else about it is brilliant, and the soundtrack fantastic as well, especially the Deep Roads, when you're in the Deep Roads, which is like this sort of dwarven sort of city network of tunnels. Really moody, really dark. In fact, the opposite of what I was talking about Etrian Odyssey, you know, which tends to be a little bit sort of light and fluffy. This is dark and moody, and that's kind of how I like it with games like this. So I really got into that. And it has a sense of humour as well. It's not all sort of doom and gloom. There is quite a lot of depressing stuff in this game. It has to be said. There's quite a lot of dark moments, but there's a lot of sort of humour as well. A lot more than, say, in a game like Mass Effect. And where I was thinking, does Mass Effect even have any humour in it? Maybe a little bit, but not as much as this. And I think that makes the characters in this a little bit more likeable as well. You get quite attached to some of the characters in this. And I found myself swapping out the characters a lot more in this than I do in Mass Effect. I normally just stick with the same two characters in Mass Effect. But in this, though, I always had reasons to want to swap them out, use different builds and things like that. So yeah, that's that. I mean, that's all the games that I really want to talk about. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to the pickup section. Okay, so it's pickups time. I did actually want to have Dragon Age as my background for this. As per usual, I've moved the camera a little bit closer to the screen because it makes it a little bit easier for me to do this section. So my voice probably sounds different as well because it's reverberating off of the TV screen. But I actually wanted to have Dragon Age as my background, and because I'm so close to the screen, all you saw is a big white screen. So I've got of Orcs and Men instead, because I was talking about Styx earlier, and of Orcs and Men is another game that Styx is in, so there you go, that's Styx for your background today. Now I've cheated a little bit. I've actually opened all of these pickups, mainly because I wanted to test a couple of them out, and that will all become clear in a sec when I show this first game, which is an Xbox 360 game called Lost Odyssey. A lot of these pickups are RPGs, sort of in keeping with my RPG phase that I'm going through at the moment. Now, I was watching a video by Scottish Duck on YouTube the other day, and he sort of mentioned Lost Odyssey, and he mentioned that it was one of the backwards compatible games that that you can play on your Xbox One. And because I never had an Xbox 360, and I've heard that this is a really good RPG, it's made by I think Mistwalker, who have done some quite well-known RPGs, some quite well-respected RPGs. They did The Last Story, which came out on the Wii a few years ago, which I've still got that still, but I've never got around to playing it, but I do want to one day. And this is meant to be like a 4-disc RPG. But the cool thing is, because it's backwards compatible with Xbox One, you actually only need the first disc. You just put the first disc in and it will download all 4 discs. So even though I do actually have all 4 discs, if you wanted to get this on the cheap, you could probably just sort of buy the first disc. If you can find someone that's selling the first disc for cheap, put it in your Xbox One, it'll probably download the whole thing. Well, it will download the whole thing because it did with me when I put in the first disc. What I will say though is, if you want to, you can actually buy this on the Xbox store. It's a little bit pricey. It's around about sort of 20 quid, something like that, which I think is a bit much for an old game. You can get this boxed, used, in pretty good nick for about half the price And like I said, if you want to cheat and just get the first disc, find someone that's selling the first disc cheap, you get the whole game. It will just download the whole game for you, all 4 discs, which probably makes it better than playing it on the Xbox 360 because you probably don't have to swap the discs. But while I was researching Lost Odyssey and looking into some of the other games that Mistwalker made, I noticed there was another game by them that was an Xbox 360 exclusive that actually came out before Lost Odyssey. And it'd be put on the backwards compatibility list for Xbox One, and that's this, Blue Dragon. So I snapped that up as well. That was quite cheap. Again, this isn't super cheap if you buy the digital version on the Xbox store. If you get a cheap used copy, put it in, you know, like all Xbox 360 backwards compatible games, and it will download the digital copy for you completely free. Well, obviously you've had to buy the disc first, but you don't have to pay once you put it in the Xbox, which is great. So I've got these two on my Xbox One now, Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon. In fact, most of the games I've got on my Xbox One seem to be old Xbox 360 games, but you know, that's cool because I missed out on quite a lot of Xbox 360 games by not having an Xbox 360 when it was current. But yeah, sort of my research into Mistwalker, I realised that Blue Dragon is actually a complete series. It's actually a 3-part series. The other 2 games were actually released on the DS, so I snapped them up as well. So we got Blue Dragon Plus, which I picked up. This is like a used copy, but it's in fairly good condition. It's complete, as you can see. And I picked up a new sealed copy of the other Blue Dragon game on the DS, Blue Dragon Awakened Shadow. I'm not quite sure what these are like. I think these might be more kind of strategy RPGs, but they are actually actual sequels to the first one on the Xbox 360. And you know, after playing Etrian Odyssey and spending nearly 180 hours on that, I really need in my life 2 more really absorbing DS RPGs. But there you go, I did it anyway. You know, it was just a compulsory thing, really, not a compulsory thing, like a compulsive thing, where I just thought, you know, I can get all these free games, and I've got a whole RPG series in my collection. This next one is another RPG. I've got to thank my brother for giving me this. He was having a clear out recently, and he was getting rid of a few games that he just thought he'd never have the time to play. One of them was this, Tales of Graces. So yeah, I got a free copy sealed of Tales of Graces F. So absolutely chuffed about that. So thanks to Dave, my brother, for sorting me out with that. This is meant to be a really good JRPG. My friend Mandy's played this, and it's one of her favourite games in the Tales series, because she's played quite a lot of the Tales games. I've not actually played any of the Tales games. In fact, this is only the second one that I own. I've got Tales of the Abyss on the 3DS, which I've still sealed actually. I've not got around to playing that. And I've got this one. So yeah, when the time comes, definitely look forward to getting into that. It's meant to be a really good JRPG on the PS3. And finally, I got this. Funnily enough, before I show it, it's a little story. It's not exactly an exciting story, but I'll tell it anyway. I actually ordered this game just after Christmas, and it just never showed up. You know, it was weeks and weeks, and eventually Amazon cancelled the order and said, you know, sorry, we thought we was going to have this in stock, but it's not in stock, so we've cancelled the order. I thought, oh, that's great. I went back onto Amazon, and it was still being sold, and it was being sold cheaper than I originally bought it. So I got it again, and it actually showed up. And it's this, Assassin's Creed Unity. If you've been watching my videos, you probably know that I've been playing quite methodically through the Assassin's Creed series. I really enjoy it. This one was a little bit controversial when it came out, because apparently there was a lot of bugs and glitches in it, which have all been ironed out now. So that's actually one of the good things about being a gamer like me, that it's not necessarily up front and sort of tends to play sort of older games and get them cheap. Is not only do you get them cheap, but you get to play an actual version that works without bugs, you know, in it, because it's been released before it's been patched. So that's always a good thing. So yeah, look forward to this. I reckon this is going to be pretty good. Set in Paris during the French Revolution, so that's, you know, a new thing for me as far as Assassin's Creed goes anyway. And that's pretty much all the pickups that I got. Like I said, a lot of RPGs. mainly sort of filling in a few gaps of RPGs that A, I didn't know about, and B, was never able to play. So yeah, not sure when I'll be back, maybe in a couple of months. Until then, take care.